This war can end now, at this moment, at this second, if Hamas lays down its arms and release all the hostages, and this war can end.
Let me just start with this question. I want to just tell us your story. How were you raised? How did you end up where you are now? And don't forget to tell us about Penn State. I'm a son of Pennsylvania. And how you learned Hebrew. I mean, your story sounds just fascinating.
Speaking of Penn State, you see, I have a Nittany lion in my on my desk. So of course I would never, when you live in the state college, you become so loyal to the campus. You feel like it's a tribal thing. So first of all, I'm as I said, I'm really honored to be on your show. And thank you for the introduction. And when you said unequivocally and genuinely standing with what I'm standing with, because it comes from knowledge, Jonathan. Knowledge changes everything. So I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia in a beautiful city called Jeddah. Jeddah is the city where I was born. I come from a Saudi Egyptian family, and all my life I lived in Saudi till recently when I moved to the UAE. And before that, of course, I moved also to Bahrain. The thing is, Saudi Arabia now is amazingly different from the Saudi that was in the 90s when it comes to education, curricula. And I believe that because of the ambitious and great vision of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and how he wants to advance the society and how he wants to advance the country. So I was really raised in a liberal family. By the way, my family was always liberal. It was not the family; it was the media and the education. I was brought up as a devout Muslim. I memorized the whole Quran at the age of 18. I read the 6 books of Hadith: Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Dawood, Ibn Majah. I authored 10 small booklets introducing Islam to non-Muslims at the age of 20. Can you believe that? So I was so sincere in my journey of being a devout Muslim. So this is why I hated Jews and Christians from the bottom of my heart, because I believe this is what God wants. God wants you to hate. We have a verse in the Quran that unfortunately is not being interpreted by modern interpretations. This verse says, "O ye who believe, never take Jews and Christians as friends." And another, I'm being very honest and open, okay? So please, I know that this might sound not comfortable to so many people, but I'm being very honest in order to tell people how I changed. So we have also other verses like the fierce enemies of the believers are the Jews. So I sincerely believe, because this is what I knew, that God wants you to hate. When I studied in Paris, 2010, I was 27 at that time, and I was still at that time convinced that you have to hate in order to satisfy God. Hate in the cause of God. البغض الحب في الله والبغض في الله. So you need to love for the sake of God, and you have to hate in the sake of God. To cut the story short, when I lived when I did a homestay program, and I lived with a French family that was by coincidence Jewish, and I was reluctant in staying with them or not, I had a long conversation with the mother. Her name was Rachel. She's Jewish from Yemeni descent. And by the way, when I brought up this topic with her, that I have to hate to satisfy God, she was the one who taught me the Bible and the Tanakh from the source, not from the protocols of the elders of Zion, just like I was taught when I was young. She taught me, Loay, God would never want you to hate. We must or we can have enmity between people and between nations, but this enmity is temporarily, not permanent. You see how God spoke about Egypt in the Torah: I will smite with my hands Egypt, and I will smite the Egyptians, and I will do this, and I will do that. But verses later, God reminded the children of Israel, "Lo tishfa Mitzri, ki ger hayita be'artzo." Never hate an Egyptian because you were dwelling in their places. Do not hate. God said, do not hate an Adamite, do not hate an Egyptian, do not hate. There can be enmity because we're human beings, but it's not eternal. And that was like a cold shower that sounded to me like, this is God. Indeed, this is God. You should never hate. 14 years ago, I changed to a better person. to a person who have different interpretations from the interpretations that Islamists and radicals wanted to indoctrinate. I overcome these interpretations. I overcome them. And I always say proudly, Jonathan, I defeated this radicalization. And I can help people to defeat that as well. So when October 7th happened, I said, Loay, now it's the moment of truth. Would you stand with your friends who changed you for a better person, like the Jews, who stood with you? Or would you revert back to radicalization or being a Muslim who is really show a true face being against the Jews? I said to myself, when I change because of knowledge. And there is no going back. And I'm so proud that from day one, I stood against Hamas and I stood against Islamic jihad and the radicals who wanted to obliterate Jews for being Jews, because I have the knowledge that makes me stronger than them. And believe it or not, Jonathan, those who have been in the darkness and conquered it and saw the light would never be defeated.
Unbelievable. So just, I need to ask you though, where did you learn Hebrew? I mean, I just heard you, speaking in Hebrew. So where did you learn it?
It was primarily, it wasn't in France, in Paris. So I went to study French. I ended up learning Judaism and Hebrew, to be very honest with you. And it was like, so the family introduced me to Ofra Gaza songs and some biblical Hebrew, Ivrit Miqra'it. And inshallah, when I go to Israel, I'm planning to spend some time to improve my Hebrew, inshallah. But I love it. It's a Semitic language. It's an amazing language. And I really love it.
And it's much easier when you speak Arabic. So I can imagine that it's coming quickly. Yeah,
of course.
Well, okay. Well, thank you for all that. Let me, another question that I think folks are going to want to hear your answer to is just some of these opinions that you've expressed about what's going on campus. You have addressed some of these protesters directly, and you went to Columbia University, and from what I actually saw on your social media feed, that SJP blocked you on Twitter. So maybe share some of your thoughts, if you would, about what's happening on campus right now.
First of all, it's a badge of honor to be blocked by students who don't want to have peace, because they believe that the only solution to have peace is to annihilate Israel and kick the Jews out of their ancestral homeland. Even if they don't say it, I totally understand where that comes from. I told you, when you've been in the darkness and you overcome it and defeat it, you become so strong that you have all the answers to the accusations and the wrong pleas that they have. So actually, I went to different campuses with a colleague of mine. His name is Amjad Taha. He's also from the UAE, from Abu Dhabi. And we toured some campuses. Some campuses I did with another team from Arab activists. And also some campuses I went by myself. And the thing is that I noticed that, with all due respect, Jonathan, let me say this bluntly. The American people don't seem to understand that Hamas and PIJ and those who want to annihilate Israel, they want to, or they will target America next. And I always say this, and I'm so sorry for this tough statement. The two towers that were brought down in Manhattan in 2001, they were brought down by the same pathological creed that Hamas holds. Don't take it from the Islamists. They will not tell you the truth. Take it from those who've seen the darkness, conquered it, overcome it, and saw the light. They will tell you the truth. And when I see white Americans and people who chant from the river to the sea, and I ask some of them, I guarantee you they don't know which river and which sea. They haven't read Hamas charter, even if they said they have. Because I face some students that say, well, we have read it, of course. The watered down one and the original one. And when I ask them to show me, they send me the English translation. I said, you haven't read it. You have to know Arabic. You don't speak Arabic. You are not a native Arab. You don't understand how openly evasive these people can be. You don't know the language, the heritage. You don't understand what أنزل فيهم حكم سعد means. That was a phrase found in one of the Hamas militants when he entered the kibbutz. He had a diary. He had a list of command, and one of it is أنزل فيهم حكم سعد. I'm sorry, Jonathan, you wouldn't know that. you wouldn't know the origin of أنزل فيهم حكم ساعد. It talks about the so-called story when the Prophet Muhammad massacred. That's not what I believe, but this is what we have in the hadith. Prophet Muhammad killed and murdered 700 Jews in one day, and that was the phrase أنزل فيهم حكم ساعد refers to. And this is why when you hear people say Khaybar, Khaybar ya Yahud, they refer to this massacre. As a Muslim, I don't believe that this massacre took place, because we would find it in different Jewish books at the same time when the Prophet Muhammad lived in the 7th century. We have zero reference to that incident, but many people, many Islamists believe that this incident took place, that Prophet Muhammad massacred 700 Jews in one day. I don't accept that, and I don't believe it happened, but we have it in our books. This is why, if you want to be honest in your fight against radicalism, you have to pinpoint where the problems are without lying to people and hiding them and then say, we don't have such a thing. Oh, yes, you do.
Wow. Okay. And amazing that you're saying this to students. And I think the students need to hear it. Certainly watching what was happening last night at Columbia University, I found that shocking. I can only imagine how that's playing in the rest of the region. Let me ask you this. You are a proponent of the Abraham Accords and broader normalization between Israel and the Arab world. What do things look like right now from your vantage point in Abu Dhabi? And specifically, I mean, you talked about Saudi and you talked about MBS. What are the prospects right now of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords?
Okay, let me start with how things look in the UAE. Thank God we have a great leader like Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the UAE, who promised and who said it out loud many times again that all the people of the UAE, and he calls the citizens and the residents of this country, the people of the UAE, are equal in the eyes of law. Everyone here is treated equally, no intimidation. Hate speech is not allowed. Hate speech is punished by law in the UAE. And honestly, Jonathan, take it from Jews who've been here. They tell me, Loay, the Jews feel safer in the UAE than they do feel in New York or in Europe or in France. They do feel safer here in the UAE, and that's because of the firm application of great tolerance and coexistence that is inherently believed by the leadership. So things are moving good, but I'll be very honest with you, Jonathan. Of course, the war hindered some projects, some advancement, but it's not as bad as the pro-Hamas and pro-war activists trying to depict. So this is for the UAE. As for Saudi Arabia, I had the honor and the privilege last Ramadan to have an iftar with the Crown Prince, the head of the private office of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. His name is Badr Asakir. He's an amazing person, an amazing human being. And what I can tell you is that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is an amazing leader who believes in peace and stability in the region, who believes that there has to be a stable Middle East, a prosperous Middle East, which can turn into the new Europe. And this has to be done with of course, the two-state solution, and with Israel and Palestinians coming together, and with the Middle East coming all together so we can prosper and thrive. This is what I always say to my people, that the leader of Saudi Arabia, don't judge many leaders in our region from what you hear in different reports that are mostly falsified. Read it from those who know the region, who are from the region, who know the people around the Crown Prince, to tell you the truth. And I'm very optimistic about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and how he views Israel in the future, and how he views also bringing the Jews and Muslims, Arabs and Israelis, and reconciling this region to be a better region, inshallah, for the next generations.
Inshallah. I have to tell you, I've been to Saudi Arabia multiple times over the last, I guess, 7 or 8 years now. Truly remarkable changes. And I think we can track all of that back to really the vision of one man. And of course, there's a lot that people will say about him, positive and negative. All of them can be true. All of them cannot be true. But I mean, the point here is that, you know, we're talking about a man who has his flaws, but wow, has he created change in Saudi Arabia. And I don't think people fully appreciate what's going on there.
One that cannot be true is that he doesn't want to have a stability in the region, or he's against that, or he's pro-wars. Of course he's not.
Of course not.
And one that is so true is that he wants to see the Israelis and Palestinians come together. He wants to see a conflict brought to an end, and he believes in the reconciliation between Muslims and Jews, Arabs and Israelis. I also flew with the head of the Muslim World League, an amazing religious leader. I hope that all the Muslims or the Muslim scholars be like him. His name is Sheikh Muhammad Al-Isa, the head of the Muslim World League, and someone works closely with MBS. He is a person that believes that Muslims and Jews, Arabs and Israelis must reconcile. And also he visited Auschwitz in 2020. So I'm very optimistic. But of course, in times of hardship, things get complicated, not that easy. But I have a great faith in him, as I have a great faith also in the president of the UAE. May God bless him, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed.
Yeah. And by the way, I've met Mohammed Al-Isa, amazing guy, and an organization that has gone through remarkable transformation over the last 20 years. Well, let's talk about that leadership in the UAE, specifically the leadership in the way that it's been combating extremism. You've posted comments made by the UAE's foreign minister, also known as ABZ. What's the message that you've been conveying there?
First of all, I love Sheikh Abdullah so much. He's an amazing, down-to-earth person. God bless him. So the message is, Sheikh Abdullah wanted to say that some people in Europe and in Western countries, they abuse the freedom of speech, and they abuse it in a way that they would make incitements look like a freedom of speech. And people, unfortunately, don't see that. And I met people in the US, Jonathan. They told me, Loay, with all due respect to what you say, freedom of speech or the first commandment, taking out the first commandment is like taking out our God. And I say to them, I'm not against that. I'm not against taking your first commandment or the freedom of speech, but you have to know that there are people who abuse it. And there is a thin line between freedom of speech and incitement. And you have to know that there are people who abuse these laws, who are calling openly in Germany to throw democracy and reestablish caliphate. And when they do, by the way, Jonathan, you would be a second-class citizen or a second-class resident paying a tribute or a jizya. You know, for what? For your life. They don't really comprehend the imminent danger that is coming because of the freedom of speech. I'm not against suppressing people or not allowing people to speak, but there's a difference between incitement and freedom of speech. So Sheikh Abdullah, that clip, by the way, in 2017, and his prophecy is fulfilled. He was talking about those who abuse these kind of freedoms, and then extremism will come from Europe because of this lack of decision making, and also because they think that they know the region very well and they know Islam far better than we do. And this is absolutely wrong. We know exactly how these people think. This is why the Muslim Brotherhood organization is prohibited in the UAE, is banned in the UAE, is banned in Saudi Arabia, and is banned in all the moderate Muslim countries who know very well the evil that comes from these kind of organizations. So I believe that the UAE made the right choice and made the right decision by banning these organizations and not allowing them to operate, because they don't have good intentions to the societies. They don't believe in the personal freedoms. They don't believe in the freedom of worship. My God, Jonathan, freedom of worship. Come to the UAE and see a Hindu temple inaugurated in the UAE a couple of months ago. The Abrahamic family house, where a synagogue, church, and a mosque side by side. That would fume Muslim Brotherhood and Islamists. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see Muslim Jews and Christians come together. And as I told you, don't listen to their speeches, to their words. but pay attention to their actions. They would tell you, no, we have no enmity between us and Christians and Jews. No, you have to understand. And this will, it's like a tranquilizer dart that would go into you, and you say, okay, so these people are good. But pay attention to their actions and pay attention to what they really believe in. It is not good. It is evil, pure evil. And this is what the American students have to know in campuses.
It's funny. You see the Muslim Brotherhood right now attacking Coptic Christians in Egypt. You see the kind of hate speech that is just ongoing. But
I want you, Jonathan, to interview one of the Muslim Brotherhood preachers about the attack that took place in Egypt against our dear brothers, Copts. You know what they say? No, this is absolutely forbidden. No, in Islam. Now, this is the openly evasive maneuver. In Islam, we are not allowed to attack Christians. We love Christians. Let me tell you the history of Muslim and Christians. This is called a red herring. Takes you away from the point, but tell them that what about the Muslim Brotherhood real stance on what the attacks happened on the Copts in Egypt. So don't listen to their words, because their words don't match their actions. Pay attention to their actions, and you will know the imminent evil that I'm talking about.
Well, speaking about evil, let's talk about the war in Gaza for a minute. This is my last question for you. What's the outcome that you want to see here? I mean, do you see a hostage release and a prisoner swap being a good thing? Do you want to see Israel finish the war against Hamas? Do you see any other way for this war to end?
Well, you know, Jonathan, when I read the coward statements by Hamas that they want to return to October 6th, they don't say that. But read between the lines. They would say we would never free the hostages unless Israel withdraws from Gaza, which was the case on October 6th, and stops the war. And they are asking for whatever was there on October 6th. They never mentioned in their demands the freedom of worship in Al-Aqsa Mosque, because they know that Israel gives freedom to the worshippers in Al-Aqsa Mosque. They didn't mention anything that is related to the name of the operation that they launched against Israel. What I really want is something very simple. What I really believe should happen is something very simple. This war can end now, at this moment, at this second, if Hamas lays down its arms and release all the hostages, and this war can end. And I asked the American students, and some of them in Rhode Island, when we had some people, like in Rhode Island University in Providence, we had some crazy students who wanted to intimidate us. And I was so proud that I stood up against those students, and I tell them, you're not going to intimidate me because I'm a native Arab who speaks Arabic very well. I know your tactical espionage, openly evasive methods. So let's talk. Why don't you, if you're asking to end the war, ceasefire now? I tell them, I have a better offer. Not ceasefire now. I don't call for a ceasefire. I call for the end of the war. Let's call for the end of the war. Release the hostages and lay down your arms. Or you think that you can demand Israel to end the war so that Hamas takes a break, remobilize, and then attack Israel again so that you can come again and protest and ask for a ceasefire. Are you crazy? You think that any other nation would do something else? Release the hostages, lay down your arms. Let's have a real peace talk that would allow Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side, because I always believe in that, Jonathan, that both people deserve to live in dignity. First of all, dignity and peace. And the Palestinians deserve that, and also the Israelis, side by side. Not a temporarily truce and then wage a war against Israel. So this is what I want. And this is what I believe should happen.
Well, as my ancestors would say, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you, Loay Al Shareef, for joining us today live on the FDD Morning Brief.